All right. What's up, everyone? It's Diandra, and I'm so excited to bring you another annual Arsenal building with Steve Kloempken. Steve is the Vice President of Product Development. He's in charge of the whole tech team there at Storm. And I am always so excited to talk to him before the PWBA Tour starts to have more of an understanding of my Arsenal, what to expect. So, welcome, Steve.
Good morning, Dee. How are you doing?
I'm doing so good. Tell us a little bit about being in charge of the whole tech department. What does that mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff to do. When I started here at Storm, I started out in the booth working at the Open Championships tournament, and then transitioned from there into the customer service, the tech customer service, taking calls from people who get Storm balls and they're trying to figure out how to lay them out or what do they do,
Mm.
which is a little bit of what we're doing today, actually, right? So we're going to get into that, but a lot of times they're just looking for tips. Exactly what do I have to do to bowl better? And our tech department ensures that not only we support our customers, but we also continue to develop the best bowling balls on the planet. So everything from working with R&D as far as the core shapes and cover stock samples to working with marketing and sales as well on how the balls are advertised, but anything that kind of technically relates to surface preparation, maybe the components, Power Edge is one of our new developments we had this past year that's been incredibly popular and successful. And the development of that stuff goes through a lot of testing and, working with different groups of people in order to make sure that our entire product line that we're covered from top to bottom as far as ball reaction and ball performance goes. And we do have the three brands as well too. I always talk Storm, but of course we have Roto Grip and 900 Global, which we're going to be talking about. Some of these bowling balls next to me, we'll be talking about these a little bit later as well too. But it's definitely fun to work with a variety of bigger group, a lot of different people. And as you know as well too, the tech department and product development. Also, there's the extra wing that you and I personally work very closely on together, which is our collegiate bowling relation. Storm, we do a lot for collegiate bowling, and you do a great job managing collegiate bowling for us.
Thank you. Thanks. Super interesting to hear about what goes into everything in your department. Most importantly, do you have anything to do with choosing the scents?
Yes. Yeah, that's a
Tell
very
us about
fun
that.
part. That's the fun part. It's always one of the couple days out of the year we have our vendor that comes through, and he always sends in advance about 3 dozen samples of different fragrance that we get to then evaluate and then kind of narrow down to new fragrances that we like. And then we put them in a bowling ball. Sometimes the heat that's generated from when the bowling ball cures can actually change that scent a lot. And sometimes it doesn't change it, but it kind of sort of muffles it a little bit. So they have to strengthen it up, but they don't have to adjust anything. But it is pretty cool when they come through with all these little different. It's really all these samples are just like if you go there's like the different like healing oils. They get those
Oh,
little 1 ounce, very
yeah.
small bottles with different fragrances that are meant to be good for your skin and
Hmm.
for it's just a holistic kind of attitude that some people like to do. It's the same kind of a thing like that,
Yeah.
and it's just made, these oils are made to really enhance what you get as a product that goes out into the consumer's mind. And it's when we started doing this, it was the spring of 2000, so it's 25 years ago we
Wow.
started putting fragrance in a ball, and it's been a hit. Yeah.
Do you have like coffee beans in between smelling other? I
Uh,
mean, I would assume that everything starts to smell the same when you have so many scents.
it is true, and I have a coffee bean little shaker, almost like a little Parmesan cheese that has coffee beans that we actually do that when we to kind of cleanse
Hmm.
those a little bit in between those fragrances. So it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah,
Yeah, well, that must be a really fun job.
is
Okay, so I'm getting ready for tour, and I reached out to you a couple of months ago with, my yearly question: What should my arsenal look like? I have some bowling balls from the previous season that are going to maybe make the cut, but there were so many new balls that came out at the end of last year and into the beginning of this year that it could be overwhelming. And you always do a really good job of giving me a good lineup of balls, but they don't all make the cut because they can't, right? I can't bring like I think the best and the worst thing about storm balls in general is that there's so many options that it's sort of sometimes hard to narrow down. And so we started with the big long list, including some from last season. And then what I do is I throw them on different patterns and often, and I see how different these balls are from one another. Because if a ball is rolling a little similar, I don't need both of those balls, but I'll keep them just in case, I see something on tour and I was like, oh, I need to switch a ball out, so I'll pick it up from home and I'll swap it out.
Yeah.
I think that 12 is a really good number for me as a professional. I can keep 9 on the truck, on the PWBA truck, so they take 9 for me, and then I will take 3 in and out from each stop. And so that's sort of like how we begin this process. And today, we're not going to go over the 12 that made the cut, but we are going to go over 6 of those. And then we'll reveal the other 6 that made the cut. But tell us a little about what your thought process is around these 6 balls.
Yeah, I think the one thing is, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think the one thing everybody needs to consider when they're looking at an arsenal, and arsenals are very important for anybody who bowls any tournament, whether it's a city tournament, a state tournament, a regional amateur tournament, a regional professional tournament, USBC Open championships, the Masters, whatever. You have to know how big your arsenal is going to be, because that's going to affect what you select. Like you mentioned, we're going to go over these 6 first here, which are ones out of the 12 that did make the cut. And we're going to talk about these and what kind of ball reaction we're going to see out of these and what you've been seeing out of them. But it's important. A lot of people, when you travel to a tournament, there was one of our staffers, Scott Anderson, actually had taken over the lead in the doubles down there at the Open Championship
Oh,
in Baton Rouge. And he listed his arsenal out, which was 6. He took 6 balls. And a lot of times when you're flying, if you have one bag for luggage, 6 balls is all you can take. You can't always take 12 with you for all these tournaments. So it's important to know how big your arsenal is and what you're looking for, because then you know how big your gaps are going to be. And the bigger your arsenal, the smaller your gaps can be from your 1 ball to your 2 ball to your 3 ball to your 4 ball, all the way on down the line. And if
yeah.
you're traveling for a tournament, the most important thing when you're going, no matter what the size of your arsenal is making sure you have the top and the bottom covered. So you need to have a ball that picks up very early, has the earliest break point for a lot of oil, something with really, they're really tight through the heads, as well as something that's going to have a very, very late break point and kind of, try to use more of its energy down the lane rather than the front part of the lane. And then you can always cover your gaps in the middle based off of the size of your arsenal. So that's part of why we have these 6 here. We've got one of your a lot of times players, we're comfortable now just calling them big balls. I know it doesn't
Mhm.
really make sense. They're all the same size, right? But we say, oh, it's my big ball, meaning it's the ball that's kind of that first one out of the bag that hooks the earliest for a very heavy oil condition, or for a fresher pattern where the fronts are real tight because they just applied all the oil. And then all the way down the line to a ball that's going to be your longest, cleanest, latest in the block. Or like, say, for the Lucy, right? And you won that tournament with EJ Tackett using a ball that was a little bit cleaner, because why? You're competing on the lanes with all these guys that not only are using some duller surface balls to start, but they also have a big rev rate, and they eat up a lot of that oil in the lane. So you got to have something that's going to
Get
not
through.
hook too soon, not too
Yeah.
early, and right, and exactly try to get it to hit when it does actually
Mhm.
hit the pins. If the ball's hooking too soon, you may hit the pocket, but it's not going to carry.
Yeah.
So that's why we need to have a nice big range of ball motion, and balls that are designed to be very clean, and balls that are designed to pick up and hook very soon or early.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And the hyperdrive, let's just start there. I It's a ASIM solid, and I was very impressed with how it carries and it hits, because a lot of times maybe big balls are once they get to the pocket, they kind of are done, right? But
Yeah.
this one sees it through, and I see that it hits hard, it carries really well. Um, it's really bright, which is fun, but it does give me a little bit of like Sherlock vibes.
Oh
I,
yeah.
I
Yep.
loved that ball.
Yeah. And maybe that's some of that's the orange too, a little
Yeah,
bit, you know, it
yeah.
could be. The one nice thing on this, a lot of the ASIM balls that we have that we've made have a very low RG. And by that, that means that the weight is concentrated more towards the center. So they have a very heavy, dense weight block inside the core, which is inside the cover stock. And when you get that really, really heavy dense, which is like what the Sherlock was, that produces a very fast spinning. It doesn't take as much energy to get the ball to rev up. The reason on this one that you're seeing a little bit more shape down lane is because that it's a RST core, which is a little bit higher RG. So in RST, it does have the AI core technology as well, but that RST core was one of the ASIMs that was not as heavy as some of the other ASIMs, like even our in the Stormline, we have the Ion Max. That ball is going to pick up and hook sooner and pick up and read the lane earlier than the hyperdrive will. The hyperdrive is going to get you down the lane a little bit easier and still give you some shape down lane. Derek Oaf, a
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska alum, right? D?
Yep.
Yep,
Yeah.
he had 300 with this ball down there at the Bowlers Journal in Baton
Ah,
Rouge.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know he's still crushing it out there.
Yeah.
I will say that in my lineup of not just the 12 balls, but I don't even know what I started with, but it was a lot. It was sort of between the Hyper Drive and the Ion Max. So I
Yeah.
was like, which one of these big balls is going to make the cut? And both are good, and both are good for different reasons. But
Okay.
ultimately, I thought that the hyperdrive gave me a little bit something different than the Max.
Well, and it boils down to the size of the arsenal as well. You know,
Right.
if there's anybody that if they had a 6 or a 9 ball arsenal, you would never even remotely consider taking this and an Ion Max because
No.
there's just not enough separation.
Yeah.
And based off of what you see on the lanes, and based off of the number one thing is our cover stock material, which not only is it the cover, but it's the surface prep. And when you're looking at a ball that comes from the factory with 2000 on it that you can then adjust by hand with, you and a lot of other competitive bowlers are always going to be traveling to these tournaments using Abralon pads or other surfacing pads to make sure that there's enough texture to get the ball to slow down when you need it to do in the front part of the lane. Your big balls or these balls like the Ion Max and the Hyperdrive are going to be the ones that you want to have that are going to pick up and read real early and make sure there's enough texture as well on this on the surface of this ball to give you that one ball feel, meaning that the first ball out of your bag in the morning when there's all that fresh oil down in the lanes and you need something that's not going to over skid and then over snap. That's what this one's going to do for you.
Yeah, it's controllable. And honestly, a lot of times people don't realize that, you maybe would pull out this ball on a long pattern because there's a lot of oil. You need to
Yeah.
get your ball to read. But I like using these big balls on short patterns because
Yeah.
it stabilizes the lane. And I'm not looking for my ball to skid flip. I'm looking for it to just like roll, and going up the back with a ball like this kind of controls the lane.
That's exactly right. And that's what, I mentioned that before with Scott, Anderson with our staffer down there. He was using a gem down there, took the lead, and his partner was using a harsh reality.
Mm.
They're both solid big ASIM balls that are going to be, balls that you would want to use when you're bowling, like let's say the doubles at the USBC Open Championships.
Mhm.
A lot of oil, fresh, early. You don't want anything not only goes too long, but it can go too long and just always hook behind the head pin, or like you mentioned, be too erratic. So
Mhm.
not necessarily. It's like how are we looking this ball to shape the lane from front to back, and we know that this ball is going to stop skidding sooner because of the combination of core and cover.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Moving on to the next ball. So the next ball isn't in the lineup on your desk, but it is something that I am pulling from last season because I loved it so much. And in fact, this is the ball that I just used on the PBA Junior show, the DNA Coil. It's a big ASIM Pearl. It's strong for me, but it's a little poppier off the spot than the Hyperdrive. So I feel like it's a really good like step down.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you want to look at too is when you start with this ball, game 1, you're not going to be throwing this for games 2, 3, and 4 and 5. At
Right.
some point you have to switch. And when do you know when to switch? A lot of times it's like, well, the ball's rolling good, but now I'm not seeing the shape, so I'm leaving a couple flat 10s or flat 7s. That's normally the first indication that it's time to switch balls.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
that's a great one to go to. You still stick with the DNA coil because it's ASIM,
Mm.
but it's going to have a little bit more change of direction off the break point. So that's the perfect, we'll call it ball 2 or a step down.
Yeah, cool. All right, and then the next one in the lineup you do have on your desk. Tell us about the Sublime Focus.
Sublime Focus. I tell you what, this one for me, I feel is almost one of those sleeper ball of the years. I
Oh.
mean, that ball came out at the same time as the Ion Max, and sometimes bowling balls, great bowling balls, get overshadowed by their bowling ball that came out with it or what else is popular at the same time. So if you're looking for a high-end bowling ball, something that's going to give you, a big ball feel, but something that's maybe not going to be quite as, it's not going to want to read the mid lane as hard as
Mhm.
what the Ion Max was doing or what the Hyperdrive would be. And why is that? The main reason is because of the core shape in this Sublime Focus is symmetrical. And when you're looking at a symmetrical bowling ball, it's not going to spin up as fast. And when I say spin up, it means that it's not going to change direction and lose that axis tilt and rotation as quickly. It's going to maintain that axis rotation a little bit better. We have some popular bowling tours here out west. Championship Bowling has a nice tour, the Storm Northwest Tour. And when you watch those telecasts, you wouldn't believe how many of the scratch bowlers out here that you saw all throughout the winter using the Sublime Focus. And that would be your 3 ball because it's not an ASIM. You're down to a symmetrical, so the core's a little bit less aggressive, but it still has that big solid cover and it has a 2000 grit finish and it is designed to handle heavy oil. So the other thing you want to keep in mind too is like you'd mentioned a lot of times, even on short patterns, you like to use the big balls. It works on long or short or not just one length of pattern, but on a heavier volume pattern, the heavy volume, the Sublime Focus handles it just as well. And based off a lane surface, certain weeks, this might be your number 1 ball.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to point out that I have this great notebook that I write all of my every year, all of my bowling balls. I try to write them in order. Maybe I'll accumulate new balls and I'll have to put them at the end of the list. But when and I write a lot of notes, and I really encourage people that are watching this to do the same because that's how you really figure out your arsenal and your equipment and the differences. But for the Sublime Focus, these are the things that I wrote down. It's a big cover. It looked smooth to me, more of an arc. It's not too responsive. Like at the end of the pattern, it's not going to jerk. It's good for short because it arcs, and it's good for long because it's so stable. So those are the notes. And to point out how I have these balls drilled, this one's 4 3/4 by 4.5 by 4 1/4. We
Wow.
didn't mention the other ball, so I want to go back just really quickly in case anybody is interested in knowing how I have laid these out. The Hyperdrive is 5 1/8 by 4 1/4 by 3, and then the DNA Coil is 4 3/4 by 4 3/4 by 2.5. So I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that also.
Yeah, no, that is important. And we've done it before, but there are some, I mean, you and I could speak for 2 hours easily just on layouts
Yeah.
and understanding what they mean, pin positions, why and when and how you use different layouts, your PSA. Like you had mentioned, your pin buffer on the Sublime Focus is a larger number, right? You said your pin buffer was 4 1/4. I think you mentioned your third number there, right?
Yeah, 4 1/4. And that's a good point. So people that are watching, a lot of them don't know what those numbers mean. So
Yeah.
let's do a very quick like layout 101. Like what's this first number? What's the second number? What's the third number? How much should they care about it, or should they just trust their pro shop operator with knowing that? What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great thing. I mean, as far as layouts go, I have this device right here, which is the arc ruler tool. And this is a device that pro shops will use to actually draw the arcs. So this post right here gets placed on the pin or the PSA, and then you basically place your pencil within one of these dots. These are all 1/4 inch distances away. So like you mentioned, 4 1/8, 4 1/4, 4 3/4, 5. You find the approach and you draw an arc around either the pin or the PSA. And this gives you an orientation for where the pin and the PSA are relative to your positive axis point. Now you're
And since we're talking about the PAP, I want to also mention that I've always had a lot of tilt on in my role and my PAP this season because I've been working on my release. It changed, and if you're working on your release
yeah.
and you're not sure if maybe your role is changing, you should remeasure it often. And when I did remeasure it, it was significantly different. And so my PAP now is 5 3/8 by 1 7/16 up, where it was before I don't like 4.5 by 1 1/8 up. So it's a significant.
It had moved about an inch or so in
Yeah,
this,
and it's
which is
because I'm coming out of the ball differently now
okay.
on purpose to
Okay.
get my track closer to my fingers and my thumb, which it's always been lower. And I made a lot of money doing that.
Yeah.
It is what it
Well,
is, but it's time
the
with these patterns I'm going to be seeing to have a stronger role. And so the numbers that you're talking about, it's in relation to your positive axis point.
That's right. So, like you had mentioned, as far as the RST for this ball, when you're looking at the layouts, I believe you had, yeah, 5 1/8 by 4 1/4 by 3. So we would actually draw our arcs on the ball here and get our pin distance, our PSA, and then our pin buffer, and then map that back out to see where our PAP is. And then we go in reverse coordinates to find where our grip center is.
Mm,
It's going to put the pin just kind of above basically your ring finger based off of where your PAP is now.
yep.
Now, the first number on those three numbers, and if you go on our drilling guide, you can go on stormbowling.com and you can go to the downloads and see where the guide is, and it gives you a more detailed explanation on what these are. We also have some good videos as well too on our Storm YouTube channel as well. We've got Alex Hoskins does a great job of breaking it down in detail, but just kind of like a quick summary, your first number is how far you're placing the pin from your PAP, and a bigger number in that generally is going to reduce the flare. And when you're reducing the flare, you're making the ball stay on line a little bit longer. So it's going to give you a little bit increased distance. The second number is where you're putting that PSA. And normally the things we look at is it in a stable or is it in an unstable position? If it's in a more stable position, that means that it's outside of let's say a 4 and a 6 inch window. 4 inches to the pap or 6 inches to the pap is kind of an unstable position, which will encourage some flaring and encourage some stronger ball motion off the break point. But if it's less than that, let's say it's only 3, or let's say it's 7, something like that, it's going to be more of a stable position, and it's generally going to produce a little bit less flare and again encourage more length or more distance. Now, the third number is really important, which is that pin buffer. And the two general categories we look at them is the pin up, meaning above the fingers, or is it down, meaning below the fingers? And if it's below the fingers, it's going to be a larger or a bigger number, being, like say your pin to pap on your Sublime Focus 4 3/4, I think you said. So if we go a 4 1/4 pin buffer, that's a big number relative to the pin to pap. If so, that means it's a pin down.
Yep.
If so, that means that it has a longer, slower transition. It stays on line longer, generally better for playing straighter angles.
Yep.
If you have a short pin buffer and you see that pin above the fingers, let's say it's a 5 inch pin to pap, but your pin buffer is only 2. Let's say 5 4 2. That's one of the layouts that I use the most. If I'm using that type of a layout, that's going to create more shape at the break point, and you're going to see more change of direction. And typically, is going to give you a little bit more kind of finish through the pocket. So, and it's all individual. It's all based off of how we roll the ball. Me, I like to roll the ball with my hand up the back of it a little bit more, play a little straighter. That 2 inch pin buffer with a 5 inch pin will help me see some change of direction down lane. So I don't leave as many flat corner pins, although my roll is still designed to help control the pocket. So
And
it's all individual, specific to how you roll the ball.
yeah, and it can be intimidating and a lot, but I think that if you trust your ball driller and you
Yeah.
tell them what kind of you would like to see in the ball,
Yep.
and what you want it to do, it's their job to come up with those magic numbers, right?
It is, and there's training for that. You know, there's a ball drilling school, innovative. Our guys, Hank Boomershine, Alex Hoskins, Chad McLean, they all just went there and have been there to help train and teach some of the people who come to try to learn. Hey, what do these layouts do? How do I drill a ball properly? How do I lay it out properly? How do I plug a ball? How do I run a pro shop? And
Yeah.
there is like a certification, you know, that our pro shop professionals go through to make sure they're not only learning all the information, but then you also have to stay up to date because there's always new information changing and new information coming out and really new strategies, you know, for playing the lanes. You'll see there was a one time where along oil pattern, you would only see people playing inside of third arrow or fourth arrow. And you would never see
Mhm.
anybody playing out to the right. And then we started to figure out like, hey, just because it's long doesn't mean you have to do this.
Yeah.
So we're always learning new things. That's why it's important to stay up to date.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, back to the list. So we've got the Sublime Focus. On my list is next the Attention Star 2. I drilled that 5 by 4.5 by 2.5. ASIM Hybrid. For me, that ball is cleaner through the front than the other balls. And it's still more of an arc. It's not too angular for me at the spot, but I really liked the shape of this ball.
Yeah, and when you're still in that part of your arsenal, you know, you've got 12 balls in your arsenal and you're looking at like a ball that's like number 4 on your list,
Hmm.
it better still be a little bit more beefy and rolly and not wanna be clean and angular. So we're still in that upper part of your arsenal, you know, we're still in that upper third before we kinda hit the middle part. In the middle part, the part that's coming up next, these 4 balls are gonna be the ones that you're gonna start to see a little bit more shape and a little bit more change of direction at the break point, right?
Yeah, so it's important to sort of have chunks of the balls
Yes.
in your arsenal. Like these look like this is this shape, and then you don't want them all to have the same shape. Maybe we have our favorite shape that for our
Yeah.
eye to see, but
Yeah.
your bowling balls should not all have that shape.
No, and that reminds me of what Norm Duke used to always say, and I'm sure he's not the only one, but maybe he was the first one. Who knows? About, you know, you have to watch your ball reaction, let the lane tell you what it's looking for. And then you grab the ball that works for that. You don't grab the ball and then make it fit how you want it to do. You start with what the lane's telling you to do, and then
Yeah,
work
that
your
is
way backwards to see what the best tool for the job is.
Hall of Fame advice right there.
Yeah, big time.
Okay, next is a ball that is on your desk. It's the Origin. Tell us a little about the Origin, and then I'll tell you what my notes were.
Origin has quickly become one of the favorite balls on tour. I mean, I don't know if you saw some of the action out there on the PBA Tour this year,
Mhm.
and I'm sure a lot of the listeners were kind of following along. This was one of the more popular and used by bowlers across, you know, all different skill levels. But when you see a ball that kind of stands out that it's in all the bowlers on tour, no matter if they're Storm or Rotogrip or 900 Global, and you're seeing them all with Origins in their bag, you know it's a good ball. So this one kind of fit that category. Now it does have the power edge, and it is an ASIM, but it is one of the balls that, due to this really unique core shape, this was a brand new core shape that we introduced with this one. The way that it was designed, it has a little bit more instability throughout the core design. So it creates more of a turbulent kind of a feeling. There's more instability, and the more stable is more of a predictable roll. More unstable means you're going to start to see a little bit more change of direction when it sees a point to where there's friction between the ball and the lane. When there's a lot of oil, it doesn't matter what kind of a core design, it's not going to affect it because there's no friction between the ball and the lane. That's where you're trying to use a bigger cover to help create a little bit more friction to try to get it to slow down a little bit. But the reason this is such a good ball and why it's positioned in your arsenal the way it is that it's an ASIM that has a nice continuation. So you can get this ball to move inside, open up the angles, and still get it to finish much more so because of its real unique core design and the fact that it has power edge finish on it as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you talk about the core and it being like a new core shape and the way that you described it with the instability. Because I'm going to be honest, when I first threw this ball, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to make the cut because it seemed a little more abrupt to me down lane. But then I realized that when I kept my speed up, It looked so good. I mean, so good that it made my top 12. If my speed was too soft, it was a little bit, like, quick in the wrong at the wrong time and stable like you talk about. But if I just am more aggressive, it looks amazing. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, yeah, that is. And you know who's been using this a lot with a lot of success?
Hmm.
Makes sense. I know I'm not a two-hander. You're not a two-hander. Doesn't matter. Ryan Barnes, a
Mhm.
lot of speed. And this is a ball that it is a good reminder, hey, to keep up a little bit more, you know, when you're rolling the ball and you know that it's going to pick up and you know that it's going to corner, you can be a little bit more aggressive with it and not being worried that it's going to go through the break point.
Yeah, I did find it to be continuous. I found it, it reads the midlight. It is a little bit earlier for me, but it also has this really nice shape on the back.
Yes. Yeah.
So I feel like I don't know what I can even relate this to in any ball I've ever thrown. So I'm really excited to compete with this because it's a different look for me.
Yeah. I think you're gonna find and as most balls do, the ones that are in the middle of your lineup are typically going to get the most play throughout the season. You know,
Hmm.
there's going to be times when the pattern you start out with balls in the middle and you end with balls that are down near the bottom. There's times when you're going to start with balls in the top and then you're going to end with balls in the middle. But typically, or maybe you go through all of them, but you're going to be hitting the balls in the middle at some point during the block. So that's why these ones in the middle are the ones that are going to play a real important part in your arsenal.
Yeah, I agree. And this next ball might be my number one. This ball is like for me, it screams benchmark. It's like I can see it being one of the first balls out of my bag to see if do I need a ball up or do I need a ball down. The Rockstar
Yeah.
symmetric solid. I drilled mine 5x4 by 2.5, and if I'm being honest, it's giving me phase two vibes.
Yes, yes, it sure is. And there's a that's that category there. And you know, I every tournament I travel to, I have at least two phase twos.
Oh
And,
yeah.
you know, you need a benchmark ball. We all do because one, you don't always know what the condition is, right?
Mhm.
So in practice, it's always important to start with your benchmark ball and have an idea. If you don't know going in what the length or the volume is, you just kind of need to know like what the middle ball in your bag is going to do playing. And you don't want to throw your benchmark ball up two in practice only or only play fifth arrow. Like you need to find a middle part of the lane and a
Yeah.
middle part of your arsenal to evaluate where this condition is, and then let the lane tell you, oh, it wants to be played a little bit more outside for now, or it wants to be more towards the middle. But the Rockstar, you're absolutely right, is just like that, and it is very much so in that phase two category. You know, when you're looking at a lower RG, higher diff core, you're looking at something as well that's a solid that has a 2000 surface prep on it that can be adjusted, or and when I say adjusted, you can take them down in surface or you can also bring them up to get them down. That's why I always travel with two phase twos, is because I have one with a lot of surface and one that has power edge on it that's a lot cleaner, but it still has that same roll that I like out of the phase two. And the Rockstar has been one that has rolled good for a lot of people, myself included. I've been using it a lot on a few different patterns, but always one that I feel like I know what it's going to do.
Yeah, it's like super reliable. So
Yeah,
I'm so excited to get out on tour with that. It's a total rock star.
it's a Rockstar. That's exactly. It lives up to its name, right?
It totally does. Um, all right, next up is a ball. I feel like it's sort of like an old trusty from last season, the Ion Pro. ASIM hybrid. I drilled mine 5.25 by 5 by 3.25.
Yeah.
And it's just like smooth and archy. It doesn't have any like abrupt changes of direction. I can play straighter through the front. I love this ball.
Yeah, that's one of the things. And most of the time, you're not going to see an asymmetrical ball that's this far down your lineup. But the Ion Pro can do that. And the main reason for that is that the whole concept with that was built off of taking a ball that was like an IQ Tour and then making an asymmetrical version of that. And a ball like the IQ Tour is so popular, as most tour level or tour types of balls that are made with that have that tour in their name over the years, whether it's pro or tour, those types of balls are going to have a little bit less flare potential. And the
Mm.
reason for that is because when you're looking at the pro level, most of these bowlers, it doesn't matter if you're a senior bowler, if you're ladies, guys, if you're a professional bowler, you have a stronger roll and a higher rev rate than the average bowler.
Mhm.
Typically, a professional level bowler like yourself doesn't always need the extra help out of the ball to get ball motion created, right? So we have with this one, which is and it's been super popular. We introduced it last summer, but it's still made its way on the tour. You're going to see a lot of them coming on the ladies tour again this summer as well too, and a lot of the PBA 50 events as well too. Those players love this ball. Love it because it is an ASIM, but it's one that has a little bit more stability built in there because it doesn't have the big flare potential. And it's also one that works well with a little bit less surface that you can get it down the lane easy. And most ASIMs, like I said, are going to be your 1, 2, 3 balls out of your bag, your earlier ones. And to get down and have a ball that you can get through the front part of the lane, even a little bit later in the block, is just really a kind of a testament of that core design that's in there, combined with a surface that, like I say, a lot of players are using it with taking that surface up to either three or the 3, 4,000, and then the power edge, even like a let's say you use something that's like a compound too. Is
Mhm.
it doesn't just have to be a polish. It could also be like a rough edge or a smooth edge compound that's going to take and smooth out that cover stock a little bit more. So
Yeah, old trusty, I feel like.
old trusty, very
Yeah.
reliable, and you know a ball's good when a lot of different styles of
Yes.
players use it. Giorgio has a softer speed. Giorgio Clenaz works here in R&D and
Mhm.
likes to hook the ball a lot and hooks it way more than I do. And he loves the ball as much as I do, even though we play the lanes drastically differently.
Yeah. Good to know. Next on my list is a new ball to me. It's the Zen 25. I didn't know really what to expect from this ball. Symmetric Pearl. I drilled mine 5.5 by 5 by 1.5. And this ball kind of surprised me. It was a little more mid lane, but really, really nice downlaid motion. Goes through the pins really well for me. Um, yeah. So what do you have? What kind of comments do you
Yeah.
have on the Zen 25?
That's another ball that we saw a lot going down the lane at the team championships, the PBA, when we had the Battle of the Brands,
Yeah.
right? You saw a lot of them throwing that ball. And that bowling center at Thunderbolt is known for being a higher friction surface. So that higher friction surface means that we need to have something that's a little bit cleaner, that's going to get down the lane easier so it doesn't give us too flat of a hit. So we still get that continuation in the pin carrying, get that ball to change direction and kind of open up the back ends a little bit. And that's what that Zen 25 definitely does and did do. So we still have some other cleaner balls that are going to hook a little bit less overall, but we're getting down into that part of the arsenal now to where we know that we're looking for. There's already been some friction built up on the lane throughout the heads in the mid lane, and now we've got to open up our angles and move our feet inside
But
and
it's clean through the front.
lean through the front.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another one I'm looking forward to. And then next on my list is the Identity. This new release, ASIM Pearl, 5.125 by 4.125 by 2.125. And I really like it. It for me, it's clean through the front. It's like more of a medium change in direction down the lane. And I feel like it's probably my cleanest ASIM in my bag.
Yeah, yeah, you're going down there just a little bit. The funny thing with identity when we're getting down here is we're looking at, the one thing that Storm, the reason why Jason wanted to call this ball identity was because the Storm always had the identity for we had balls that were clean that opened up the back end, and that's what he
Yep.
wanted to create, something that he knew and you felt comfortable moving in, opening up your angles. So it doesn't surprise me at all that that's where you have that ball fitting in your arsenal because that's really where it should be. It should be one that if you're using it on the fresh is going to be too clean and too sharp. And you got to wait for the oil to break down in the fronts in the mid lane and then carry down a little bit down lane. And then you move your feet in, you open up your angles, and now you've got, what you've always come to associate Storm with being the ball that gives you that shape on the back end when you're moving in and open up your angles and trying to create a later, more angular break point. So
Yeah, and it's sort of similar to the Road Warrior for me, but the Road Warrior, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see on different patterns. I feel like that Road Warrior has like a magnet to the pocket. Like I think that it just like has its own brain. I feel like I can move really far left with that and
Hmm.
get it to lots of different spots and it'll always find the pocket and carry well. And mine is 5 1/4 by 5 by 2. This is a symmetric pearl in the Road Warrior. Have you thrown that ball a lot?
I have, and I can tell you, I bowled a tournament. We bowled a tournament that had a format where you bowled 12 games, a match play on Sunday. So you can
Mm.
imagine how burned the lanes got. And it was a 12 lane, or it was a 12 games. The 12th game, the position round game, you get a couple shots on each lane. And my all the other stuff that I brought with me was burning up and hooking too soon, and I couldn't get in lane. I went to the Road Warrior. This was up at a tournament in Montana, one of our Storm Northwest Tour tournaments,
Mhm.
and I bowled really good at the end to make the step ladder with the Road Warrior because that's exactly what it gave me. Is it's kind of like an identity shape, except
Mhm.
because it's symmetrical, the ball maintains its axis rotation longer, so it still has a little bit more side roll and axis rotation when the ball comes off the end of the pattern, so you still get a little bit more continuation and finish down there. When the lanes get really burned up and you got to get something down the lane, the Road Warrior is a great option. That's also one too that a lot of the guys, when I was able to go out there for a couple of events this past season here on the PBA Tour, and when the lanes hook, you'd see a lot of our staffers throwing the Road Warrior.
Yeah,
Very, very
I
good ball. Yeah.
believe that. Yeah, that's when did this ball come out?
This one came out in November with the Origin, actually. Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's been on the
Yeah.
market now for about 5 months or so, and so it was out the whole time throughout the whole PBA Tour season this year. And they drilled a lot and threw a lot. There's a lot of play out of the Road Warrior. Now, sometimes these balls, like say you might say maybe somebody watching this video might be like, "Well, I didn't see that on TV. That what are they talking about? They use the Road Warrior line." Well, what happens on TV? The lanes are fresh, right? They run them for practice. They bowl on them for 10 minutes. They get a couple shots and then they start recording. So the lanes don't always transition like they do in an 8 game block. So you sometimes don't see the balls that are way down the line in your arsenal on the tour because you watch the shows and they only bowl 4 games and there's one on the lane, and that's it. And then it's over. So
Mhm.
a lot of times you
Yeah.
don't ever get down that far in your arsenal. But believe me, they still have them and they still throw them. Andrew Anderson threw that ball. He threw the hustle X-ray a lot. Jason Belmonte threw the hustle X-ray.
Mhm.
And a lot of these balls that are down on the lower end. Patrick Dombrowski had a good year. He throws a lot of tropical surges and even
Mm.
typhoons as well too. That might be one that you drill out on tour,
Mhm.
maybe for the Lucy or for any of the other tournaments that are known to have a little bit higher friction surface. You might have to use a Typhoon because it's in that cleaner lineup, much so like the Road Warrior, but even the one notch down below that.
Yeah, I shared my arsenal with the ball reps that are going to be on tour. And Wesley also mentioned that X-ray. He said, that might be something that we could drill up out there. Yeah. So and the Typhoon, I think Brie Cote just used that at the women's shot 750 with it, I think.
I think she shoots 750 all the time. It seems like she's been bowling so good for years now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. With the Typhoon, she did. Yep.
And I
Yep.
also want to mention that Brie also throws 14 pounds. So for those that are very anti dropping weight, in my case, I dropped to 14, I don't know, like 5 years ago because my rev rate to speed wasn't in balance. And so now I can throw the ball just a little bit harder. And with my higher rev rate, it doesn't overreact. And honestly, I carry more with 14 than I did with 15.
Your pin
So
carries better.
I do. I carry more. I strike more because I'm able to generate a little bit more speed. And so those balls, I mean, even at 14 pounds, they're
Yeah.
hitting.
The dynamics are in there core design wise. So, and with the AI core technology too, it allows us to balance out the differential numbers between 16s, 15s, and 14s. It used to be back in the day, you might see 58 differential out of a 16, and then 46 differential in a 15, and then 36 differential in a 14. It's not like that anymore. So that has helped greatly with that too. So the balls in 14 are better. And like you said, throwing the ball a little bit firmer is always going to help you. You look at the best bowlers on tour. There's not that I can think of really any one of them that throws it slow, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right. And so the last cut, well, besides my plastic ball, of course, that's number 12. But the last one, I needed a ball that I can rely on to really not do much, but that is not urethane. I don't use a lot of urethane. I'm open to it, but I always feel like I can manipulate the ball on patterns to not have to use a urethane ball. So the last one that made the cut, IQ Tour AI, symmetric hybrid. It's so clean. It's just so
Okay.
clean. I drilled mine 5 by 4.5 by 4.5, and I actually really love the shape. I think that it's good for later in the block. It's good if you need, if like I'm completely lost on the lane and I just need to know that I can hit the pocket. I know I can with this ball.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and really, it's like a lower RG version, a faster revving version of the Typhoon. So if you end up adding the Typhoon to your arsenal later, that will be the ball that would fall below your IQ Tour AI. But the same thing that we were talking about before with the Ion Pro is that this IQ Tour AI is again a pro level type of a ball with less flare potential, less differential, which means the ball is going to stay on line longer, and then it gets you through the front part and the mid part of the lane easier and longer, and that's why it's in the spot that it is in your arsenal. And I think when you were bowling the PBA, when you had your doubles tournament
Yep.
there in Reno, that you saw one of the players was throwing IQ Tour AI there that was striking quite a bit. Um, it's a ball that when it does hit the pins, because it hasn't used up too much of its energy along the way, it really does hit and creates it loses less energy going down the lane than a lot of the bigger balls and the ones with stronger cover stocks and more surface. This really kind of saves it all up for the back end.
It's super predictable.
Yeah.
You know what it's going to do. There's no surprises, and I think that that is important for especially a ball when the lanes are fried, or
Yeah.
you just need to go a little bit straighter, but you can't because maybe it's an old lane surface or
Kind of
whatever.
goes where you throw it, you know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
exactly. It goes where you throw it. That's
Yep.
right on. Okay, that concludes my arsenal for now. I am very open-minded when I go out on tour. This is just the beginning of the arsenal build. There might be balls that I switch out, I take out. You don't know until we see these patterns that Nick Hoagland puts out on our tour. So all I know is that I'm really excited about all these choices. I feel like they all work together well. They don't give me the same shapes. And I just know they're going to strike a lot.
Yeah, you have a really nice variety there. So I mean, I feel like when you're out there, you're bowling in Topeka,
Hmm.
right? Not knowing what the lane condition is ahead of time and not knowing the lane surface, you know that when you bring those 12 balls down there, and what do we do when we look at that? Like I say, a lot of times I recommend you start with a benchmark type of a ball like the Rockstar, play somewhere kind of near the track area, not the extreme, and kind of see what it does, and you get a feel for, okay, how much oil is there? How severe is it at the end of the oil pattern? Does it change direction? Then you
Yep.
kind of know, do I need to start up or go down or move left or go right? And if you kind of use that as a way to evaluate, the environment, same thing goes for the Open Championships. You don't know in advance of what you're going to be bowling on or what you're going to see. So it's important to have a variety of ball reactions and know that you can always go up or go down in your lineup based off of what you're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't thank you enough. I know we go way back. Our friendship goes way back. I don't even know what year we met, but it's been decades.
Decades. Yes, it has
Yeah,
been.
and I really appreciate our friendship, and I know that I can reach out to you at any time, and I just want you to know that I really am grateful for you and all of what you give to me and to Storm, and yeah, it's I guess it's nice to have a guy.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Dee. I appreciate it as well too. And you got everyone here rooting for you too when you go out and bowl on tour. So
Thank you. Well, I'm going to do you proud, and I've been working really hard on my game. I finally have no pain in my knees. I got both my knees have joint
isn't that great?
replacement. I'm fully healed. I have no pain for the first time in probably 10 years bowling. So,
Oh, that
yeah, what a relief.
Man, that's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Take away some of that stuff, those physical injuries can
Mhm.
really inhibit, performance, and you have all the talent and stuff in the world, but if your body's restricting you from doing the thing that you want to do or you're trying to do, then it's going to affect your score, So
Yeah, and for those that are watching this that are putting off their knee surgery, this is a sign to you. It's
do
this particular surgery was called Macoplasty, Mako plasty. It was done by a robot. The recovery time was just a couple of months, and I'm telling you, I have knock on wood, zero issues. I spent a lot of time recovering and strengthening. You got to put in the work, but I'm a big advocate for the surgery. It was sort of life-changing for me.
You
So
said it was done by a robot. This reminds me of like there's some kind of like AI thing happening, and it's just, you just Deandra's knee, type it in, and then this and it comes down and just cleans everything out and out. And
yeah,
yeah,
whatever
anyway,
it was, it worked. So I won't ask too many questions.
I love it.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Building Deandra's Arsenal for Tour. And Steve and Storm, thanks for everything that you do. And we'll see you next year, I guess. See ya.